Okay, I think that's 30 seconds. Why don't we get started? Again, thank you for joining. This is the Broad Sky webinar on AI, 5G, and IoT. I'm just going to cover a couple housekeeping things at the top of the hour. First of all, this webinar is going to be sent out, including the live broadcast, the commentary, and all Q&A to everyone who registered for this webinar. So whether you're on now, or if someone misses it, or if your staff people want to see it, we will email this to you when we're done, including the entire deck. And then the second piece I want to say is we do have a question and answer period at the end of this webinar. And the way to participate in that is either on the Q&A section or the chat section. Either way, just go ahead and log your question in as we're going through. You don't have to wait till the end. And the process we use is we will read each question on the Q&A first, and then we'll answer it to the best of our ability. And then we'll move over to the chat side and we'll answer all that as well. And then that's all captured and bundled out and sent later on. So answer the questions. A lot of times, a lot of the value of the webinar actually comes from the Q&A period. We think we have our finger on the pulse of this, but this is an emerging industry that the standards haven't been set yet. There's any number of opportunities. And so a lot of times we can hone in on things on the Q&A piece. Okay, great. Let's get started. My name is Tom Benson. I'm the VP of Strategic Partnerships here at Broad Sky. Broad Sky is part of the Epic IO family of companies. And we also are, within that family is IntelliSite. IntelliSite is a 20-year veteran of Internet of Things, smart city, and AI applications. And so combining our expertise in 5G and delivering connectivity with the IntelliSite abilities to deliver IoT and AI has a very broad product offering, and then also pretty unique in the channel. I'm not aware of another company that could put all these solutions together and monetize it into a regular MRC, commissionable type product that we're all used to. Bo Barker is also on the call. He's our VP of Technology. We'll be sort of trading back and forth and exchanging information. And then when we get to the Q&A piece, I find that Bo ends up carrying most of the load there, particularly as questions get more technical. So our key topics today, what is the opportunity? Intelligent connectivity, IoT, AI, and 5G all blend together very nicely. If for no other reason than a lot of times you want to put IoT and AI in places where there isn't a robust fiber network or cable network. We want to monitor things that are off the grid, if you will. 5G and 4G LTE steps in and delivers that connectivity, and then all the intelligence that's behind it. Then second, mid-band 5G is here. You're going to see 20 ads for 5G today and 20 ads for 5G tomorrow. It's not the deep dive on this webinar, but Broad Sky has definitely rolled out the 5G routers, and the 5G and the speeds we're seeing can be remarkable. It's the first step down the 5G path, and that continues on. So you want to be a part of that marketplace. Then we're going to talk about the IoT market opportunity and some forecasts driven by that, and then get into selling IoT solutions. So how do we make it integrated? Certain examples of IoT and AI outcomes, and then some use cases that we've come up with. One of the themes of this webinar and one of the themes of IoT is this: no matter what use cases we give, there will be a small fraction of what's possible. And so we do our best to suggest specific use cases, and then we do our best to tie that to certain themes that would be applicable outside that use case. But no matter what we do, we won't capture the entire opportunity. And so part of everyone's job on this call is to find applications to solve business problems. Now, using technology to solve a business problem that was previously unsolvable is the core of what IoT does. It isn't about the sensor and the cost of monitoring it. It's about what business result that we can drive from monitoring. And so we think about it a little bit differently in really tying technology to a business outcome. The opportunity is enormous. The growth of IoT over the next 4 years is projected at 57%, and 55% of all data is going to be IoT driven by 2025. That's right around the corner. All of the applications that are going to drive all that data are being researched, installed, vetted out right now. And this is a greenfield opportunity. This is something that has not existed before. To the extent that the SD-WAN market is saturated, the VoIP market is saturated, the fiber to the premise market is saturated, and you're competing against something that's well entrenched, the IoT market is not saturated. This is a fantastic greenfield opportunity to go next level and get closer to your customers to drive solutions. 70% of enterprises will have some sort of IoT use case by 2023, and then wireless demand in and of itself is forecasted to grow 51% by 2025. So regardless of the entry point, we're well suited to supply this demand. We know the demand is out there. And so the key element is matching up with the partners who want to get involved in this early and go out and craft solutions and become market leaders in the segment that they choose. So intelligent connectivity, what is it? The 5G fully realized, intelligent connectivity is really no more than one, high-speed 5G low latency networks, and then artificial intelligence placed at the edge so that you can do your compute on the edge and not have to bring it back to a core somewhere. Although you could bring it back to a core if you want, but putting it on the edge is proving to be the model that people are moving more and more to. And then linking literally billions of devices on the Internet of Things to drive a business outcome. I think that's the key, to drive a business outcome. So what's enabled by 5G? And then if you look at the stack on the left-hand side, you'll see sort of three segments there. Millimeter wave, which is going to be the next iteration of 5G. That is a very narrow signal that the specs on this traditionally have always stated 1 to 2 gig download, sub 5 millisecond latency. That network is still in development. That's called Verizon Ultra Wideband. It's in certain NFL cities. It's in Grant Park in Chicago. It's in stadiums, but it's not widespread across the country. So that flavor of millimeter wave 5G is emerging. Where we're at now is called 5G sub 6. These are multiple frequencies that the carriers have grabbed and have started to deploy on their networks that make wireless go faster by linking and bonding different frequencies within the router, and then also actually doing something called DSS, which is sending multiple bits over the same frequency. So they're slicing and dicing the network frequencies and they're using it more efficiently. And then 4G gigabit LTE, 4G LTE, which is, we're all well familiar with that now, that will always be a foundation of the 5G networks. 4G is not going to do what 2G and 3G did, where it gets sunsetted because it's no longer relevant. It will always carry traffic. The investment made in it and just the physics of it, it will need to carry enormous amounts of traffic on the 4G side, if for no other reason than to free up space on the sub 6 and millimeter wave side to carry traffic that needs to run faster with lower latency. So 4G is not a sunset. You put something out there that today it will work for years and years and years. It doesn't have an expiration date. And so dense urban areas will have 5G. That's where we're going to have manufacturing, self-delivering drones. I think I saw Domino's had a drone they were putting out there that was just going to show up, and then the door opens and there's your pizza with no driver inside. VR, et cetera, and then the other categories that will go into this. So there's an enormous opportunity to drive wireless services using different router technology and different methods of getting to it, and BroadSky is well versed in all of these. The spectrum layers, if we just look at it, this is almost just another representation of that same concept. In the urban core, you're going to have that high capacity layer. Then the mid-band 5G layer is the sub 6 that we were talking about on the left-hand side. And then 4G as you start going out across the country, where 4G keeps getting faster and faster and faster. You could also call it low-band 5G. It's utilizing the same frequencies. But this is how we're going to build this wireless networking stack. The further away you get from the edge, the less chance you're going to see millimeter wave because it only propagates half a mile. So in rural areas, you're not going to see millimeter wave. You're just not. It doesn't go far enough. What you are going to see is faster and faster 4G. As a case in point, when I started doing this in 2014, we were getting about 15 meg download on the first iteration of 4G. We're now regularly seeing 100 meg download, again, on 4G, using equipment that really doesn't cost that much more. It's just the improvement curve that's happened on the 4G side. That improvement curve is going to continue. I think we'll start regularly seeing 200 meg on 4G download probably 2 years from now. So the speed keeps increasing. So we put Willy Wonka on here and I thought about singing the theme song, but I'm going to stay away from that today, maybe next time. But it's the concept of use your imagination. Again, we're going to give use cases on this, and we're hoping it spurs a conversation. But you want to start thinking outside the box for what have you heard your companies continually complain about? Where are they wasting money doing automated repetitive tasks that a sensor could more easily do so that those employees could be repurposed to something more valuable to the corporation, either more customer facing or more research and development facing, or something other than a repetitive task, like refilling something, going to check to see if something is empty and refilling it, and then doing it again, and then doing it again, and then doing it again. That's not a high value task. It would be easier if you just knew that you were going to refill it than going to check and then planning on whether you're going to fill it or not, along those lines. So using your imagination is sort of the concept here. We're going to give some ideas coming up on some things that we've already solved for, and hoping that spurs a conversation towards greater solutions and wider penetration. So just turnkey solution examples, things that are kind of out of the box. You know, safety and security, that's an entire industry. Intelligent transportation, an entire industry, right? Healthy living, so monitoring the air quality inside, particularly if you have an at-risk population, or for any reason the air quality internal to your organization, they deem it important. And there's a million reasons that they might want to do that. But what is the air quality? What are the particles per million? What is the temperature? What is the humidity? Is it where I want it to be? If you're offering a high-end type experience somewhere, then internal air quality becomes important. Thermal screening, checking temperatures that comes in and out. We are still in a COVID environment, unfortunately, and so that is still a thing. Or for just anybody who wants, like a healthcare organization, who wants to know people's temperature as they're moving through. How many people are in the building, either for regulatory purposes or just to see, was it successful? Something beyond a turnstile counter. Mask compliance and social distancing, still a thing. And then retail behavior analytics. If you put cameras in a retail environment and then you can see where people are going in the store, you can see what end caps are they being engaged with and what end caps do they not care? Where do they congregate? How often do the lines get greater than 3 or 4 or whatever that store's policy would be? How quickly do you react to that? Instead of just looking up and noticing there's 5 people in the back and hitting the light and somebody walks in who's 200 feet away, you could start to see that there's 5 people and there's 3 people in line. And then we can start planning for that. Someone gets lit, we open up another counter like that. You can get ahead of the curve versus being behind the curve. And then retail curbside pickup. This is not a trend, this trend is well established. When someone pulls up to pick up their item, we've deployed a solution where we'll read the license plate and we will alert the store employee that that person showed up. So the customer doesn't have to log into an app. They don't have to notify someone they're there. They move into a designated space and the person walks out and hands them their groceries or whatever it is that they purchased. Massive application there. And then finally, cold storage management. Vaccine is the most obvious, but really all pharmaceuticals plus all food sources have to be documented that they were at the proper temperature the entire way through the chain. There's an entire industry built around this, and either on the upside to make sure that you're ensuring quality, or the downside to make sure that you're not falling on the wrong side of a lawsuit. You need to be able to prove that your product was at the right temperature at all times. And the only way to do that is to put a monitor at each stage of the chain. So these are turnkey examples that we could put out into the market for your customers right now. We put together sort of a quick start guide because one of the challenges of this is how do we translate the vastness of IoT into a product that I can at least start talking to my customers about that would have a cost basis next to it. And so we separated this into 2 concepts. One is camera bundles. So the camera bundles are obviously where you want to see what's going on, and there's value in seeing what's happening. And there's a million applications for that. It could be security, it could be for gate monitoring, it could be for how many people are coming in and out of your store, or how many people are walking by your store that aren't walking into your store, whatever the case may be. These cameras can do a number of things. We put this into 4 camera bundles and 8 camera bundles. And an 8 camera bundle will cover really quite a bit of territory. They can be deployed inside or outside. And then we can install them in a manner where they have air gap security. Very important. Many people do not want some form, anything connecting to their internal network, because then they have to authorize it and they have to monitor it for a vector attack. If you remember the Target hack 4 years ago, those people actually came in through an HVAC monitoring system. They hacked through the HVAC and they got to the credit card terminals, and the CIO of Target lost his job. And Target lost at least $1 billion in market cap that day because people didn't know if their credit cards were literally secure at Target. So everything that gets installed, IT directors don't want it on their network. So what Broadsky does is brings in an independent wireless circuit, and we power this whole thing on an air-gapped security internet connection that has no connection whatsoever to anything else they're running on site. And so there's no possibility of coming in through anything that we're running and getting to the corporate network. So that's very important. Additional options on camera bundles with security is actual voice down speaker. And voice down speaker means that if someone exceeds your parameter, if someone is too close to your fence for too long in a remote environment, they are likely looking to do damage, either graffiti, vandalism, or theft. A voice down sensor will come on and at a live knock and say, individual at the fence, you need to move on, the police have been called. And that individual turns from no one's observing me, no one has any idea I'm here, or worst case, they're going to try to identify me 30 days from now, and I'm wearing a hoodie, so what are the chances of that? To, oh my God, I'm being observed right now, I'm going to move on. It makes a massive difference for theft prevention, particularly in remote areas, or not remote areas. It removes the need for live security. You don't have to have as many patrols, and you can see what's going on at the perimeter of your property at all times. Then on the sensor packs, and we're going to give an example of this in a healthcare thing, but this is when you can start monitoring any number of things, and I have a list of them on the slide coming up. You can monitor how full is the fuel tank. You can monitor what is the temperature on this electric motor. You can monitor the DC amps coming out of the motor. You can monitor if the door is open or closed. You can monitor what the temperature is within the freezer and what was the fluctuation throughout the day. What if somebody leaves a freezer door open and the temperature starts to creep up, an alarm goes off, somebody goes and shuts the door. If you can imagine what needs to be monitored, it can be monitored. And this leads to different business operations of knowing what are my physical assets and how are they performing right now? And then what do I need to do to make sure they keep performing, either preventive maintenance or operational improvement or et cetera, et cetera. That's what these sensor packs do. And in an upcoming example, using a healthcare thing, but you can apply it to anything, we'll sort of give a better example of where that jumping off point might be. So these are not all the sensors. This is just a really boring slide showing 75 sensors, and it's just a start. Again, the problem with IoT is, what does it do? Well, it does so much. And so, again, these are jumping off points, but every one of your customers that you've sold an IT solution to, an SD-WAN solution to, a faster fiber circuit to, a VoIP solution to, a UCaaS solution to, also has these problems. They're not in business to have a faster internet connection. They're in business to do whatever it is they do. And some of these sensors are going to be applicable to them. But it won't be sitting in the IT stack, it'll be sitting in the operations stack. And so if you think about your entire customer base and what it is that they do for a living, this doesn't come out of the IT budget. This comes out of the operations budget, and how do we run our business budget, and how do we run our business better budget? And so it allows all of us to have different conversations with different people at the organizations we've been dealing with for years to solve problems that were previously unsolvable. We're not selling technology. We are selling solutions enabled by technology. And that's what requires more scoping and qualifying and a little more imagination on the front end. But every business has a need for something. And then it's just a question of, what do you need? How can it be improved? How do we install it? And let's get started. The form factor on this, as provided by IntelliSite, looks like this. It's called the Universal IoT Gateway. It has a Cradlepoint router built right into it. Then it has NVIDIA cards right in. It also runs edge monitoring and edge intelligence it already has an embedded industrial computer in there. So there's an enormous amount of processing power in this. This powers the sensors. This powers the cameras. This powers high-end video analytics at the edge. So you're not required to send it to the cloud and have that interpreted. And then there's at least 200 IoT sensors available. It's rugged. These have been installed in Minneapolis and in Texas. They were being used to monitor intersections during the Super Bowl, which was in Minneapolis. Go Philly. And and it was very cold. It was 23 below that weekend, and they worked flawlessly. So you can also connect this to what's called LoRa. LoRa is the 900 megahertz band, and you can actually put a sensor over a mile away from this, and it will communicate back to it. So we're not worried about line of sight, and we're certainly not worried about wired connections. So if you can place this in the middle of something, you can extend your reach out a mile in every direction and start monitoring things. So think about oil fields, or think about remote power, think about wind power, think about solar power, think about anything that's operating outside of an urban environment or inside of a walled garden where it's very difficult to bring in new wires, because I'm thinking about railroad yards right now as an example. Almost impossible to bring a wire in because, for various reasons, you just can't dig a trench. If you put this in the middle and then connect it LoRa, you can now monitor your entire fence and the trains coming in and out, and et cetera, et cetera. You can see everything. The UIG powers both cameras and monitors at the same, or sensors at the same time. So this is a dual purpose box that will do both the video and the sensor monitoring. The sensors that go out, the LoRa based, they're low energy, long reach. So once you put a sensor out, it doesn't draw a ton of power. So it will run for 8 to 10 years once you put it out there. It's not something that you're refreshing every year. So this is a great solution for any kind of yard environment, if you will, or car dealership environment, or anything that's spread out over a fair amount of space that people want to see that they've never been able to see before, or they want to monitor that they haven't. You put this down in the middle, you connect the LoRa sensors out to the edge, they communicate the information back, and all of a sudden you have visibility into what you've never had visibility into before. This is more of a video solution. And if you see the blue light in the upper left-hand corner, if you're involved with cities or law enforcement at all, the blue light signifies police presence, along with cameras. These are fantastic for parks, public spaces, or anywhere where public space and private space sort of intersect and people will move from one to the other where they're not supposed to be. We actually do have a live video of this, of what I was talking about before, and I'm going to click it in just a second. This is someone approaching a fence at a remote power station to do, we are not sure what. But this is the voice down that I was speaking to previously. So I'm just go ahead and click it right now. Okay, loiter, loiter. That may have been a prevention of a $200,000 copper theft right there. Or frankly, they might have just saved that person's life if they would have touched a live wire. But regardless, you can see the power of that. That changed from a remote, nobody knows what I'm doing, I'll be here as long as I want, and if I can figure it out, I'm gonna cause damage, to it's over. The value of that is pretty high when you consider how many people have remote assets that they can't realistically place a person at all night long, they'd still like to have visibility into. So the power of that is pretty enormous when you just think about loss prevention, risk management, damage prevention, it's whatever term you want to use for it. Having visibility to things that you couldn't see before is very valuable to certain segments of your customer base. So this example, now this is a healthcare example, but if you want to use your imagination, this could be any plant whatsoever. We're just using this as a healthcare example. So in this particular case, this is a hospital, and a hospital has, their businesses serving patients who come in. So they have healthcare concern. And so one, we have a monitor on the freezers to show, making sure that the temperature is proper at all times. Second, we have sensors on the HVAC systems and the cooling tower and the salt tank to make sure that they're not vibrating, they're not empty, and they're not about to fail without having to send somebody up there. There was a story told when we were on a webinar the other day by Mario Campos, who's the president of IntelliSite, about a fan that went into vibration mode on an HVAC unit on the roof. And while they noticed the hum, they didn't realize it was going. They got up there in time and they fixed it, but it was within a day of failing. And if that fan fails, they would have lost the entire unit from the vibration. They also would have lost their HVAC for the hospital at the top. There would have been a cascading chain where they might have ended up needing to evacuate the hospital if it was a hot day in the south, as an example. If they just would have put a sensor up there, it would have shown that vibration immediately before anybody would have sensed it. So they got lucky, but people aren't going to get lucky every time. You can apply that to any company who has environmental control systems, who needs those environmental control systems to ensure that their business keeps running. Any sort of pharmaceutical manufacturing, any sort of controlled environment manufacturing. Then they have cameras in the parking lot. And so going back to the example of one UIG can power both sensors and video cameras. So now they can see what's happening in their internal parking lot. There's water air filter monitoring as they're putting this through. There could be asset protection in the retail piece of this as an example, and then their generators and their fuel levels. So all of this could be controlling to one plant manager or asset manager or whatever the title may be, so they can see what's happening on their plant, in their infrastructure, in their millions or hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that they put out there. What is happening right now? And then how can I use that to prevent problems and run more efficiently? Even down to the waste container. Is it full or is it not? Same use case or same concept, but applying it to a retail outlet. This is a store environment, obviously. And now you can put the cameras up to see, one, how many people are in line? Do I need to add somebody? Two, do I have a loss prevention aspect to this? If I have cameras on there and someone perhaps does a lawsuit on a slip and fall, was it my fault or can I defend against that? So that, that's a litigation management issue. The camera in front can actually do customer demographics. It doesn't identify individuals, but it identifies gender and age and race so that you think that you're attracting this demographic into your store, but you're actually attracting this demographic into your store. Should you either change your marketing because your marketing is not as effective as you thought and start marketing more to the demographic who's actually showing up, or are we not getting the bang for the buck that we were looking for in the demographic we were marketing to, and we need to increase that? Either way, it's actionable to the marketing side. They're throwing a lot of money out there to put people in, and all they can count is how many sales they got, but what type of person is coming in. And finally, this all can be powered on a 4G LTE device, which also conveniently provides backup point of sale and can power all store sites and all credit card transactions. So this is an integrated solution for just one retail outlet. If they extended this out and pointed a camera into the parking lot, they could pick up the license plates that were coming in and walk customers' orders out when they showed up versus making them notify store staff that they're there in some fashion. So either physical industrial examples or retail examples, these are two jumping off points that we're hoping, gauge interest and gauge imagination as to what could I do for my existing customer base who's bought technology solutions from me for years, but now I can get deeper into their operational stack and start actually improving their operations with technology, but not technology as an end to itself. This is the total solution sort of in a stack. We're just approaching the same thing in various measures. So you can start with edge sensors and cameras, IoT sensors, and then leverage, and you can even leverage existing camera infrastructure to make this work better. So if a company already has an investment in some sensors and some cameras, and they don't want to start over, but it's not delivering what they want, this solution can bring that data into the UIG and then output it in a meaningful fashion, which I'm going to show on an upcoming slide, with a dashboard that you can actually see what's happening in a much more intelligent and integrated manner. There's a fair amount of failed IoT deployments out there. The great thing about them is that they've committed to it and they want it to work, but it's not working. And so just going in and making it work the way they wanted it to can be a big win. Again, then the whole thing is a managed service with a 24-hour NOC attached to it for those people who need either ring down services, real-time event response, health and wellness of the device. So it's very valuable in and of itself. What we're monitoring is very valuable in and of itself. And so it needs to have a 24/7 sort of reporting, troubleshooting aspect to it to make sure it runs at all times. So these are some of the actionable outcomes that we're looking for. As an example, are too many people in the room or not enough? Is the fuel tank running low? I'll give one personal example. I had a customer 3 months ago who was sending a truck out an hour away to check how much, I think it was fuel oil, but how much fuel oil was in the tank, because they didn't know. And if it was empty, they'd fill it. Well, inevitably, it was inefficient. It was an hour and a half round trip. And sometimes when they went out there, really didn't need to be filled. And other times it was dangerously low. They ended up going out there too often, and it was cutting into their profits and wearing down the truck and the person driving. It's kind of a boring job. They put one fuel level sensor on, they attached it to one broad sky air gap security router, and now they know exactly what the fuel level is in that tank at all times. And they send the truck out when it's at 20%. Boom, done. It's perfectly efficient now. They saved however many truck rolls and however much time and however many profits that they got back from that it was costing them. And that's just one tiny example. There's another example for a restaurant chain measuring how much of your cooking oil has been used. And when you dump it into you can't dump that in the sewer, although people still do, but you're not supposed to. You can't dump that in the sewer. You have to dump that into a collection thing. How full is it? Well, if things are really busy and you're moving a lot of fries, then it gets full faster. Other times, not so much. Again, the trucks would just go out on a route and they would pick it up. Sometimes they would need to, sometimes they didn't, but they did. There's even actually a company who buys this used oil. And so for them to be efficient, they only want to pick it up when it's 95% full, et cetera. So thinking of how many routines and routes and processes are built on, we're not exactly sure if we need to do this or not, but we better go check. Now replace that with a sensor that tells you exactly, you need to do this now, or you don't need to do this now. And you can now build your business around that efficient flow of information as opposed to 30 to 50% efficient information of when should I do this. There's a lot of profitability gains for any company who's doing any sort of routine routing to do really anything. Every business has outsourced what they do to somebody else. Nobody's in the fuel oil business. Nobody's in the filling up the tank business. They outsourced it to someone else. Those companies that are providing on-site services, they only want to roll when they have to. They're an outstanding buyer for this type of service. So I spoke a little bit about putting all these sensors out and monitoring things, but then how do we see it? And how do we see it intelligently? And how do we know something? Information in and of itself is useless. It has to be presented in an actionable manner in some sort of dashboard fashion. So this is a representation of all the things on the left are inputs. They're just data inputs. These are things that we could monitor, but then we move it into the universal IoT gateway, and then finally we put it onto a dashboard. And the dashboard is called Deep Logic and Deep Insights. It is AI driven. So now you can not only see what's happening right now, but you can see the trend line of what's been happening. And so this in and of itself becomes, was that just a blip? Or did that also happen a week ago? Is this a trend line that's continuing? I see the heat's up right now. Has it been up for the last 7 days, or is it just happening right now, et cetera, et cetera? That dashboard in front of the person who's operating the plant allows them to make an intelligent decision or make it automated. If you increase this threshold of whatever, then do this without anyone having to talk to anybody. We just know what we're doing. We know why we're doing it, and we're doing it on the basis of real intelligence, not guessing. So Deep Logic and Deep Insights in a Telesite product that's been refined and continues to be refined and continues to get better and better and better over time. You're aggregating multiple inputs into one dashboard with both historical and real time. And then you can create alerts off of this to make it actionable. So do I need to text somebody, email somebody, roll a truck? What do I need to do with this? It even integrates with third-party software and other services. You can integrate it with Kafka, Spark, AWS, et cetera. There's an off-the-shelf version. And then inevitably when people, if they want it customized, this is what I need to see. It's also customizable as well. Here's just an example of a smart energy meter. Certain companies, this is very, very important to them. And so here's what my consumption is. Here's my current voltage. These are the different meters I put out there, voltage, frequency, where they're at, et cetera. This is very meaningful to somebody who's monitoring the power at a plant. This particular one looks to be the New York DOE. And so now they can see what's going on out there, as opposed to I can't see anything. It really moves the ball forward in knowing what's going on at your plant. And then just another example of fuel tank monitoring. So I have 4 tanks out there. What levels are they at? Where are they located? How much have they drawn down? And so fuel tank 1, this one needs to be filled and this one's full, et cetera, et cetera. However you need to act on this, you can act on this. And so real-time information replacing guesswork is what IoT delivers. So I sell an integrated solution. One, I'll go back to the previous point. Either A, it's air gap security, so they can't use this as a vector of attack. We can set this up with a broad sky, very powerful router, so it all runs on wireless. We are storing the video storage at the edge. We're not transmitting it to the cloud at all times and being monitored elsewhere. So we can store 30 terabytes of data at the edge. So you only need to look at actionable events, meaning we're not pumping an enormous amount of data through at a cost that's not going to be borne. It's just stored right out on the edge. Okay. Broadsky makes sure that they have great coverage out there by using, applying our gold standard, which we talked about numerous times, we won't delve into, but we map every site to see who the best carrier is. And then we put that carrier into the device. The devices we put out there are built for the environment. I have oil field routers that we put out in 2015 that are still running. I have them in North Dakota and I have them in Texas. They get to 40 below and they get to 160 degrees. And the reason they're still running is because they were built for it. These are ruggedized routers with heat sinks that accept DC power, AKA dirty power. They are built to be in an industrial application. If you put something made for an office into an industrial application, it will rattle apart or fall apart in 6 months and you'll just have to start over again. So we match the right carrier and the right technology to the environment it's going into. And then the next part is the IoT tools and solutions with the intelligence behind it, either edge devices or sensors through the gateway, leading to real outcomes that people can actually use to run their business. So that's the integrated solution offered by Broadsky in a channel-friendly environment with MRC and commissions paid monthly. It's a very, very powerful selling tool to look at your current customer base and say, how can I get engaged on a different level that's not technology per se, but actually improving the business outlook. So the takeaways on this, and then we're gonna move to the Q&A, is one, the opportunity is enormous. Nobody is going to not be doing this. That's too many negatives. Every customer you have is going to have some version of a monitoring within the next 4 years. You can't compete in the business world with inefficiencies anymore. You're going to have to be as efficient as your competitors. Their competitors are going to do this. They're going to deliver a better customer outcome. Your customer is going to need to do it too. It's probably worth suggesting to your customer, why don't you get out front of this now? Since we're trending this anyway, would you be the leader or the follower? I can give you the ability to be the leader, okay? IoT solutions generally start with a simple idea, whether it's monitoring one component that we know is important, whatever that component may be. And then once customers see the power of being able to monitor one thing, they start to realize there are many things that they're spending money on monitoring or controlling or otherwise managing that they could do more efficiently. And so we're going to start small and then we're going to get bigger. There's a little bit of a patience curve in designing these things. It's worth mentioning. Saying to someone, I can get you a 100 gig fiber circuit for the same price that you used to be able to get a 50 gig fiber circuit is a pretty easy thing to get across. Changing business operations to reflect a better flow of information takes a little bit longer, but it's more valuable. It is far more sticky, and it leads to far more opportunities. The IT buyers are not solely in IT. In fact, a lot of times they're outside of IT. So it could be in the operations side, it could be in the finance side, it could be in the risk management side, it could be either operational risk management or legal risk management or other sample buyers. And then from the IT perspective, the big concern is that air gap security and making sure it's not an attack vector. Because this is air gapped and we're running it through an independent internet circuit, we've addressed that concern at the outset. We don't have to start explaining firewall protocols because it just doesn't touch their network. And then finally, to bring this into our own, a former life, if you look at the UCaaS market 20 years ago, when we were going to put in SIP chunks, and then we were going to be able to route calls to, we'll bring this device, then this device, and then we can either bring it to your laptop. There was a cost component savings to that. SIP trunks cost less than PRIs and trunks. But if you look at the total value of UCaaS and the total aggregate number of UCaaS seats that have been put out there, I would venture to say that the reason people put this in, 10% of it was we were going to save money on what we were doing before. And 90% of it was we can run our business much more efficiently than we used to because technology allows us to do so. And the people who had enormous success in this were the people who matched the technology to the business outcome, not the technology to the cost center. And so we're suggesting that same concept as approaching to IoT. How do I solve problems? Using technology, not here's the technology, the sensor cost X per month. And so those are the things we're suggesting on the IoT side. These are some of the examples that we gave on jumping off points and how do I get engaged in this? And then we're going to move to the Q&A piece. So please look to where you are, not where your opportunity is, but where you are. If you have a channel manager you're already working with, give them a call. If you're new to this or this is the first time, look to where you sit. And then in the Midwest, talk to Ash. Northeast, talk to Mike. In the Southeast, talk to Todd. Southwest, talk to Scott Sharples. SoCal, talk to Amy Eshelman. And in the Northwest, talk to Jim Miller. If you have some form of your business where you're actually buying services and then reselling on your paper to your end users, talk to me. That's my segment here at BroadSky. Okay, so Bo, I hope you're primed up because the Q&A section, I'm very certain, is going to roll. First question, Andy asked, and so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the Q&A piece right now, and then I'll move over to the chat side. I'm seeing questions on Q&A and chat, and then if you have a question based on a question, just go ahead and lob that in. We're going to answer questions until we're done, okay? So first question, can we sell the service internationally? Great question. The technology is applicable internationally. Getting the wireless connection out there is more challenging. We have contracts with all 3 carriers in Canada. We have contracts with all 3 carriers in the domestic United States, and we're expanding into LATAM. So Andy, I'm going to answer the word yes, but engage us as soon as possible. It's less off the shelf internationally than it is domestically. And then Kevin asked, who or what industry should we be calling on to get the quickest opportunities, and how prevalent is the smart city? So I'm going to break it into 2 answers. And Maureen, I might ask you to comment on the smart city piece of this because you know at least about as much about this as I do. So what industry should we be calling on to get the quickest opportunities? Kevin, I would start with your current customer base. I would engage somebody say, who you already have a relationship with, and as one starting point, as one learning curve, and say a whole new realm of IoT has opened up. We can monitor things that are previously monitored. We can help you either do video applications or sensors, or you can construct your own narrative here. But how can I help you solve business problems using technology that we haven't done before? And it should be a pretty good jumping off point because you're already a trusted advisor. Or you would look to anybody who's doing any kind of route sales or anybody who's monitoring a valuable physical plant. So as an example, hospitality is monitoring everything. One example given that we were talking about earlier is the rodent traps, right? Is the rodent trap full or not? Well, they employ somebody to go check those things every day, but you could put a sensor on it to see every time it turns. The way a rodent trap works is they wander in and there's a little snap and they get trapped inside. And so now you could just have a monitor to say 70% full, 20% full, empty. Well, if it's empty, you don't have to go. If it's 100% full, you can't catch anybody anymore. That's a super mundane example, but so be it. There's 1,000 of those examples in a hotel. You can even put a sensor on the toilet paper roll in the guest bathrooms, which is weird, but you don't want to run out and you don't want to fill it up too soon. And so you put a sensor on there to say once it's turned 1,500 times, it needs to be refilled. And until it's been turned 1,500 times, it does not. And so again, it's more efficient. Anybody who's monitoring anything and has to do a business action is a prospect for this. And the more valuable the physical plant, the more opportunities they have. They want to monitor everything. They got a lot of money into this. Maureen, on the smart city side, and the question is how prevalent is the smart city? And my beginning answer is very prevalent. Municipalities and governments are putting quite a bit of money into this, but I'm curious your thoughts on that. I think Maureen might be traveling.
Hey. Sorry about that, Tom.
Yeah,
I was muted and didn't know how to unmute. So,
of course.
Well, the smart cities, we actually call it smart communities, but it's similar. It is extremely prevalent, and the target market really for us that we've found a lot of success in is probably the smaller to medium-sized municipalities. And it's not that we can't manage the larger ones, but frankly, the smaller to medium ones don't have to go through as much bureaucracy, to do budgets and things like that. But it is extremely prevalent. We've done a lot in California, a lot in several other states. And it's anything from monitoring, water pipelines to smart communities and monitoring parks for safety and vandalism. There's traffic solutions that we've deployed at intersections for pedestrian safety, car counting, things like that. There's also other examples of somewhat I would say, more of a tourist town that's pretty small areas or small cities, but in the summer or certain holidays, they get big influxes of parking or cars to need to park. So they've actually incorporated IoT and our solutions into their parking system. So customers can go on and actually see where they can park in the city. So it makes for a much better user experience when people visit their city and their town. So it's kind of endless, really, the options there. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. Smart city and monitoring, some people are calling it Big Brother, but the trend line is clear. The cities want to monitor their physical plant. And so if you look at a city, while they're not in it to turn a profit per se, they want to know what's happening in their parks. They want to know what's happening if they have any sort of like municipally owned stadium or buildings that they own, who's coming in and out of them, what's the service utilization, who's in there, temperature monitoring. They have more safety concerns because they're more exposed to litigation. So knowing what's happening on their plant, very important to them. And then let's not forget, cities have enormous investments in infrastructure. They have trucks, they have storage facilities, they have water pumps. They sometimes get involved with some form of, at least next to the electricity, but certainly they're always involved with water. And so are my pumps operating efficiently? Are my holding, what level are my holding tanks at? Am I losing water? I've heard many stories of cities losing enormous amounts of water within the pipes themselves. They're also monitoring their sewer side. The infrastructure on a city that needs to be monitored is vast. And traditionally governments aren't super efficient at that. And so there's a great greenfield opportunity there to talk about these sensors doing both video surveillance and sensor monitoring. It can be definitely applied to municipalities, and they have budget, and they have to keep spending money, and they have to keep doing what they do. And so how can they do it more efficiently? Steve asked, can you elaborate on the use case for retail curbside pickup? Reports, analytics, customer experience, et cetera. Bo, you know as much about this retail curbside. I know you've seen it sort of firsthand. Can you just sort of describe the process a little more deeply on how that's working?
Absolutely. I think one of the things, just my experience so Safeway, I go online, I order product, and I go there to pick it up. As Tom mentioned, you go in, you park in a parking spot. It's they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. You have to call someone or go back onto an application, let them know you're there. Oftentimes the people who are running the product out for curbside pickup are also the people who are taking those calls or monitoring the application. So as you can imagine, they're torn between getting product out and answering new requests. So really, when we're talking about the ability to do things like LPR, what I could do in that instance is integrate with the application. Just from Safeway's perspective, they could say, enter your plate number in. And so I put in my vehicle plate number, I pull in, The video analytics would then detect my plate number. It doesn't really matter what car I'm driving, as long as I'm driving the car that I provided the information for. And then the worker inside is automatically notified of my presence. I don't have to call and try to connect with them on the phone or do additional steps. And it's really that increased customer experience. I think we saw this trend up this year, obviously because of coronavirus, but really, in growth, in organic growth in these cities and counties and places like that, certainly seeing more and more people take advantage of delivery and curbside type programs because they simply don't want to get out of their car, pull all the kids out, get them out of their car seats, run through the store, do that whole thing that we enjoyed as children, dumping extra stuff in the basket. That doesn't get to happen through curbside, but it really creates that efficiency and increased customer experience. And there are other applications like, hockey pucks that can detect car presence. And as you can imagine, when the pavement gets resurfaced or somebody repaints lines and paints over those kind of things or resurfaces over the top of them, those solutions don't work as well. So we really got kind of a robust thing there. And in reality, it can be tied into store point of sale. So you can track end to end, kind of soup to nuts, what that customer experience is. Maybe they do go into the store and it's not just curbside pickup. And now the application is aware of what their vehicle is and who they are and where they are in the store and their buying trends and habits. And that's extremely useful analytics. Like Tom said, are we hitting the right demographics? Are we getting the right products on the end caps? Are those products selling? That's a huge piece for retail and those detailed analytics, how many people are coming in, the wait times, it all lends to a better experience and increased shopping and spend with that store.
Yeah. I don't know that any of us on this call are going to sell this to Walmart, but anybody who's competing with Walmart, they can't be 5 years behind. 5 years from now, they can't not have this because the experience will be so vastly different that it's just, right now you already have, do I want to run to the store or do I hit a button on Amazon and it'll be here in a couple of days? So that's hard. And then if you're selling something that Walmart also sells and you want to do it curbside, they can't be calling in and then maybe getting somebody, maybe not. You just want to walk it right out of them. So second tier, third tier, fourth tier retail is going to need to do this if they're going to be here 5 years from now. Just like they had to be able to sell online if they wanted to be here against Amazon. Now their curbside is going to have to match Walmart. That's the opportunity on the retail side. And there's 1,000 stores out there. There's tens of thousands of stores out there. They're going to need to level up and get to this level on their curbside game. Those are the people we've traditionally sold to in the channel is midsize and small business. And so this is a great use case for that. Well, I'm going to engage you in this question too. Paul asked, how many routers do we have in the instance example for a hospital use case? I'm going to start to answer this. We can pop it from a broadcast perspective. We could put one router in. If it was a hospital and we're moving a lot of data, I would put a higher end router out. But would you concur with that we could power that all with one BroadSky wireless router device?
Yes, I mean we have different devices in our portfolio that scale up and down for bandwidth needs and number of carrier connections and things like that. So really, I think that the question is subjective to the hospital. Do they want air gapping? If they want air gapping, then maybe that increases the number of UIGs, which includes the router in there, versus using the hospital's existing network and backhaul. Tom mentioned that the range of LoRa is fantastic. So if you have maybe 2 or 3 UIGs, you're covering a large campus area. It really depends on kind of the application, the level of integration, but we could certainly run a backup circuit for the hospital on a single LTE or 5G router.
Okay. Ty asked, does BroadSky have a device that will turn AC heat off on when a window or door is opened? So that's a great question. The sensor in and of itself is going to report on a condition. And then the next, and Vote, check me on this, but then the next level is, can we actually do a remote integration into the control set to either engage it on or off? And I'm going to guess that that's still going to run through the remote management software of the device. when we're going to report on the condition. But how far along would the integration be between sensing something and doing something?
That's really what a lot of the logic controllers, the logic chaining within IntelliSense and Deep Vision do. So absolutely, window opens, it breaks contact with, a sensor, pretty typical sensor contact. That can also be an alert for security if the window's open, maybe outside of business hours, and it's not a heat on off scenario. Or it can do both of those actions. So then the window opening triggers that event and would then relay to the environmental controller, the thermostat essentially, that it needs to be off. So yeah, that's fairly straightforward when it comes to an integration intelligence and sort of reporting perspective.
Okay, so the sensor can be tied to the logic controller of that remote device and actually tell it to do something based on a certain threshold.
Yes. Yes.
And then I imagine in some cases you could also tell the camera to point and zoom to that area from a security standpoint and a window open as you would.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul asked, is the IntelliSight module custom built for customer application? The module is not custom built, Paul. It's a pretty robust device. So the customizing on this is not the hardware. Having said that, if you're going to put, there are details on that. So if we're going to hook up LoRa sensors that are going to be a mile away, then we're going to need to add the LoRa sensor gateway into the UID. So it's not customized, but it's a capability that's going to need to be added before it goes out the door. But the device is quite robust in what it does. The customization is going to come into what sensors do we put out there? What do we want to monitor? And then what do we do with those monitors once we pass certain thresholds? So a lot of the customization comes in on the dashboard. What information do you want to see? And then how do you want to see it? And then what do you want to happen once you see it? Where do you want things to be emphasized and flagged? When do you want automatic emails, automatic texts, automatic phone calls to go out to people based on certain threshold events? And what other things do you want stored because they're more background information? So there is a customization component to this on the business operations piece. Again, just sort of using UCAS, the UCAS example, how many times do you want it to ring in call center X? And if nobody answers it, when do you want it to forward to cell phones? Is it at 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings? We used to do that all the time. So that's a detail we can't answer, but we would set the threshold and then it would forward at 3 rings. It'll be like that. What do you want to see? And then what do you want to happen when what you see happen? That wasn't said very elegantly, but I think you got the point. Hans asked the question, do solutions make sense for a small single location business? At some point, if it's Joe's bait shop, I don't know. If he's going to put IoT in, it could be a great business, but if you can see everything that's happening from when you're sitting behind the counter, maybe not. But a car dealership, absolutely. There's a single location, but it could cover an acre. And then they have people approaching their fence all the time. They have people on site all the time. They have, unfortunately, people stealing catalytic converters and coming on. They have to report to the insurance company. They want to know how many people came in and out. They want to know the demographics. They want to know all kinds of things. And that could be one car dealership. So I would lower the threshold on where this is helpful, maybe lower than you think. At some point, it's not going to make sense, but I suspect it's lower than you think. And then kind of turning that around, anything that anyone's operating anywhere, but they don't have eyes on it, they need to talk IoT. They need remote sensing and they need to know what's happening out there, whether it's a municipality or a business. If they don't have an employee on site, or even if they do, it's valuable to them. They need to set up a monitoring solution so they can see what's happening at their far-flung asset. Okay, Andy asks, are there SLAs on the broadband? What is the upload and download speeds? How fast can service be set up? Do you put dual SIM cards in the hardware? Oh, these are such great questions. Broadband, yes. Are there SLAs on the broadband? Yes, there are. On both download speed, upload speed, and packet loss, jitter, and latency. If you contact your channel manager, then get to the details on that, but we do put an SLA on our wireless circuit, and we're one of the very, very few who does that. And next question is, what is upload and download speeds? It depends on the technology you put out there, Andy. So We used to be limited to 15 down, 7 up in 2015. We have many competitors who are still putting those routers out there and calling it 4G. And yes, it's 4G, but it's not 2021 flavor 4G. Fastest recorded download speed we've seen on a router, Bo, is 200 plus. Have we broke that barrier? Single threaded?
Single threaded.
100 meg for sure.
Yeah, over 200. I'm trying to remember the exact number, but yes, over 200 megs down.
So the advanced routers that are out now, for Andy and everyone on the call, the advanced routers that are out now are bonding multiple frequencies together. And so we can grab 4 frequencies, and in the latest iteration, we can grab 7 frequencies, bond them all into one usable download channel. And then we're also bonding 3 channels on the upload. And so it's a moving target, how fast on the upload download, and it always keeps going faster. But if you need to go fast, and it's been the topic of previous webinars, we can get you to go fast. The next thing we can do is not just bond frequencies on the one SIM card, we can bond multiple SIM cards together. So I could take 4 SIM cards connecting to 3 carriers and bond them all into one usable download channel. And the download speeds there now are into that 400, approaching 500 meg range on the down. And then we can also bond the up. So going fast on wireless is the engineering reason for existence at BroadSky. We totally nerd out on that. You can see my voice pick up as I talk about it because we get so excited about it, but you can go really fast. How fast can it be set up? You can get a router, and if we super hustle and there's an expedite fee, you can get it in a day. We fulfill numerous orders. Next day, there's a process to put it in the front of the line. It's got to be in by 12 o'clock PST or 11 o'clock PST, but we get routers out fast all the time. And then do we put dual SIM cards in the hardware? Yes, we do. So every BroadSky device goes out with an active SIM and an inactive second SIM. That inactive second SIM can be activated remotely if we need to use it for various reasons. We can also just activate the second SIM and then put the router in a mode where it toggles back and forth. SIMs, A, B, A, B, A, B, whichever signal is either for failover purposes or if the signal quality drops on one side, or if the device is moving, would be a great example of that. So as you're transiting through different coverage zones, you might be on AT&T for a period of time. AT&T is not so hot here, but Verizon's looking good, so just toggle over to that one. Kevin asked, can IoT applications enhance or improve existing CCTV deployment without extensive rip and replace? Yes, although I'm seeing your CCTV comment there. At some point, if the cameras are so old that they can't be IP networked, then they're going to be rip and replace. But if they put something up, but that's near, like if they're 20 years old and they're running on coax cable, if they can't transmit on IP, then I don't think we can work with it. But many, many customers have put out first generation, second generation, third generation IP cameras. The cameras are good, but the intelligence behind them isn't doing anything. And so they do not have to rip and replace that. We can just take the data feed and make it much more actionable using the AI platform, the UIG, and then the deep logic, deep insight on the backside. So you can actually realize the investment that you were making in the first place and get the result that maybe you were going for at first, but you're disappointed because you didn't get there. It's a software patch, basically. You put a much more powerful software program behind it, and now the cameras do what you thought they were going to do in the first place. Okay. Well, this one is for you. Does deep logic and deep insights integrate with point of sale and customer relationship management, which is a follow-up to the retail question?
That's a really great question, Steve. Yes, the answer is yes. Often in these modern day applications, everything is API driven. So both Deep Logic, Deep Insights platform has a full extensibility for API to consume and get and post data. So point of sale, for example, the ability to pull in those point of sale records and match those with customer analytics would be a great example, as well as CRM. I think most of the CRMs that we've seen out there have moved to a REST or some type of API-based SOAP, webhooks, some way to pull that information and exchange it between machines. So yes, absolutely, that can be done.
And then Eric asked, are we competing with security companies that provide security cameras and services that already have similar 4G, 5G devices? There's a plethora. I mean, you can buy, you can go to Walmart and buy security cameras. So There's always a low-end provider here. And however, mating up to a 4G device so that it's air gap security, you've now eliminated 90% of them. Most of them are asking you to connect that to their current network, and then authorize it as another outlet on the network, and then have to be able to tunnel through it with all the firewall concerns that go with it. So in the niche of providing a wireless connection to power this air gap, very, very few competitors in that regard. And then also being able to deploy it in a place where there is no current internet connection. Can't go to Walmart and solve that because there's no internet. We can solve that by putting it, an internet system out there. A BroadSky wireless internet router will work anywhere, almost anywhere in the country. There's a few places you can go, you can't get signal, but almost anywhere in the country, particularly if we deploy an antenna, we pulled signal in from 17 to 20 miles away. I realize there are places where there's an exception to that, but 99% of the time, for 99% of the population, we can get a wireless internet connection to that spot. We're very, very good at that. And then to expand on that a little bit, Eric, this is not a low-end solution. When the costing comes out, it's not competing with Nest and do your own security and here's a static image. This is going to be people who want to see an event and then act on the event, not just have a static image of the event going at all times. There are better solutions for that if you just want to, here's the front end of the retail outlet, okay. But if you want anything beyond that, that's where this starts to become very valuable and actionable. Okay, that was the last question on the Q&A, and there's 2 on the chat. And that one we already answered. Oh, and it was Ty's question, but he put it in the Q&A. Okay. That answers all the Q&A. Those are really good questions. You can see this start to percolate out as this becomes more real. BroadSky has been exposed to this now for 5 months. We and IntelliSite merged into the Epic IO brand in January. I've been exposed to many of these presentations internally. It keeps making more and more sense to me. I don't expect that we've transferred 100% of the knowledge that even we have, and we don't have all the knowledge yet. But as a starting point, it's a great time to be starting in IoT and starting to talk to people about business solutions. What you will find is that people have problems that they can't solve, that they want to solve, that you can now solve, which is a great feeling. Over and above making money, it's nice to solve problems for people that have been, an issue for years. And then once you solve one, you'll solve another one, either for that company or a company just like them, et cetera. So if there's any encouragement on my side, it's engage even at a curiosity level for people you already have a relationship with, and then think about people who are doing routes or repetitive tasks that are based on flawed information, that they could, if they had perfect information, how would they run their business differently? Yeah, that's a pretty good concept. If you had perfect information, how would you run your business differently? IoT can deliver you perfect information on not only what is happening now, but what has happened over time. And then from there, you can build a business practice that more accurately reflects what's happening versus what we think might be happening. There's a lot of money being wasted checking on things that didn't need to be checked on, or not doing things that needed to be done, either way. Okay. Maureen, did I miss anything, or is there anything you wanted to add to that as you searched for the mute button again?
No, that was excellent. Just really, like you said, the opportunities are vast. I would say reach out to your channel managers. They can really help you talk about through these opportunities, the questions to ask your customers, to get that conversation started. It's all really about solving problems for your customers. So it really gets you in better and deeper with your customers. So just starting that conversation. So let us help. Thanks, Tom.
Great. Okay. Please stay tuned to your inbox. We run another webinar in June. Topic, I think this point is to be determined, but we do this every month, and we will do it again. Please reach out to your channel manager for either IoT opportunities or anything related to wireless broadband. 5G is here. If you haven't noticed, we are delivering 5G routers into the field right now. If people have the demand curve for 5G is now being developed, we can help supply that demand. We have supply for that demand, better way of saying that. And so it's a great time to be in wireless and IoT. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye.